Welcome to the Production Talk podcast with me, Jan of mixartist.com.au. In this podcast series, we celebrate the modern way of producing music. We want to talk about all things related to songwriting, recording at home, and music production. So if you produce your music at home, this is the place to be. Please subscribe and recommend this podcast to all your friends. This is the Production Talk podcast, episode 43. Welcome to another episode of the Production Talk podcast. For this episode, I drove to the town of Lismore to meet a local musician and president of the North Coast Entertainment Industry Association, Gary Pinkerton. I've known Gary for over a decade, mainly as keyboard player on many local stages and as a driving force behind the North Coast Entertainment Industry Association's popular Dolphin Awards ceremony. He's also a respected business owner of a long-running shop in Lismore CBD. Gary and I had been chatting on Messenger, and eventually we found a time that worked for both of us to do this interview. I arrived at his place in a lovely neighborhood with lots of trees around. From the street, the house looked just like a normal house. But as I dragged my recording gear to the doorsteps, I started to note that on the inside things were not quite as calm as the outside suggested. Gary greeted me at the door with a 3-month-old baby in his arm, his first grandson, while also speaking to a customer on his mobile. It started to dawn on me that Gary now ran his business from his home. I learned that Gary's adult son and his partner now lived there too. 3 generations and 1 business, now all under one roof, with Gary running his business and minding the baby at the same time. Gary had timed the interview around his grandson's nap time, but the baby boy wasn't in the mood for his usual schedule. So Gary sat down with the baby snuggled up in his arm, and I quickly set up a mic on a stand and headphones for him, while Gary spoke to another customer in his calm voice on the phone. I sat down on the floor opposite to him with a handheld microphone in my hand and hit record. Gary, I really appreciate you making time for me today. I'm starting to understand just how busy your life is at the moment, and I really appreciate you making the time. Gary, you're a musician yourself. You're a keyboard player, is that right?
Absolutely. I started playing when I was 15 at various places around the area. Lismore was one place we used to play back in the day at the Canberra, and I think at that stage our singer was 17, I was 16, John, my brother, was 15, and our drummer was 14. So
wow.
And then our singer turned 18, and we just we've played sort of down in Ballina and Casino and wherever we could get a gig back in those days. But it was there's a lot of music happening back then, really a lot of music, and I think some of the this region, and I think particularly Lismore itself. Certainly, the 80s and 90s were the prime days of sort of music happening around the area, and the bands coming out of this area rival anything coming out of any of the capital cities as far as their musicianship and talent skills.
Wow! So you have quite a bit of experience in the music scene for decades now, and today we're sitting here. You are holding your grandchild in your hand,
yes,
and he's just trying to go to sleep. So you are still an active musician despite all the additional things you're doing today, like running your own business.
Yes.
And you're also the president of the North Coast Entertainment Industry Association.
That's right.
It sounds really like you have your life dedicated to music and the art scene in the Northern Rivers. What's your motivation? What keeps you going?
I think it's just the love of music and that enjoyment of getting out and performing in front of people. On Saturday, I actually played in Ballina at the Shores Bay Hotel. There was a benefit concert for the flood relief, so I went down and with one of the bands I work with, the Electrifying Bulls, and we did an hour set, and it was so much fun to get together after quite some time, not being able to play anywhere.
Oh, fantastic! It's great to see you getting back on stage. Tell us about the bands you're currently involved with, the musical acts.
So I play in a duo as well, and the Wendy Ford duo. And Wendy writes a lot of original material, and when we perform, we do a combination of original and covers with her. And then every now and again, I play with another band called Epic, and with Stuart Kent, Jesse Balfour, and James Palmer. Their usual keyboard player is Alan Park, very well respected keyboard player in this region. Alan was the musical director for Keith Richards for many, many years before he moved out to Australia and moved to this area.
Wow. Okay, wow, fantastic.
So Alan, he plays with the Pheromones, which is another really well-known band in this area. So when Alan's playing with them, and if there's a job comes up with Epic, I fill in for him.
Great. Wow. Do you find time to practice music in your busy day-to-day life?
I try and fit it around what I'm doing. So it may be early in the morning or at the end of the day, and I will go through and sit down, particularly if I'm prepping, say, for jobs, I will sit down and work. Epic is one I have to, because the keyboard material is, because some of it's quite technical, and challenging.
Yeah.
I think of the Highway Star by Deep Purple and the organ in that, and particularly the organ solo, getting through that and through the dual work that you're doing with the guitar. It's a piece that you really have to get your head around.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, that's fantastic. Are there any records out that we could put into the show notes, links to your music?
Oh gosh. Well, Wendy has some material out at the moment that I've been involved in, and with the other bands that I've been currently working with, they're basically cover bands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. And then in addition to all the music, you're the president of the North Coast Entertainment Industry Association.
Yes. Well
known for the Dolphin Awards here in the area, which is an institution in the music industry. It's a really important event in the musical calendar. And you're behind that as well. So how time-consuming is that in addition to what you do already?
Really very consuming, and particularly sort of in the lead up to the awards, there is so much work that goes in behind the scenes to make sure it runs smoothly on the evening, let alone sort of getting entries organised for judges and getting the results and correlating the results. Is a lot of work, but again, I've always felt that the music industry on the North Coast has been a part of my life, and I've wanted to give back to the North Coast music industry in some way, and I thought by being part of the awards, that would be one way. It actually started in its early inception was 1991. There was an awards night held in Byron Bay in December, and I went along to that particular awards, and at that time my mother-in-law and I and another chap by the name of Laurie Davies had been working on some original material, and so we entered that in the awards night, and that was it was a great experience. And from that, a group of over Lismore way actually formalised the awards, and have carried it on ever since. My involvement started in 2007. And I just came on as a board member to help move the awards forward. So, and it's been just run by volunteers all that time. Yeah,
that means you've been in charge basically since 2007.
Not necessarily.
About 15 years.
Yeah, the president at that stage who came on was Mark Pitcock, and then when Mark decided to move on, then I moved into the role as president. And for quite a few years, Brett Hamlin was the president, And since he relinquishes, I've gone back in the president's role, but I'm quite happy to hand it on to somebody else down the track. Yeah,
I can imagine. Well, you really have a busy life. Gary, we obviously have to talk about what happened in Lismore in February, the major flood event that affected so many locals and, you and your business and your family. Are you happy to talk about how that affected you and your family?
Absolutely. So it's absolutely devastating. It was really the flood height level that was predicted in Lismore up until midnight on the Sunday night was 11.5 metres. So most people in South and North Lismore thought they would be safe. And certainly in my business, I was packing up the last of my stock. A lot of it we took out, some we took up and put up in the floor above, and then other things we stored within the shop. And it really wasn't until we left at 1 a.m. and came home and the Bureau of Meteorology had revised the flood height level that we knew something dreadful was going to happen. And as it turned out, hundreds of people had to be rescued from roofs in North and South Lismore and also in the basin in the Lismore area. The actual floodwater went to 14.4 metres at its peak. And there was, in my shop itself, it went to the roof of my shop. So 34 years of what I'd stored in my shop that I'd left there had been destroyed or badly damaged.
That's devastating. Gee. And, just need to take a second to take that all in. I've been to Lismore just on the days after to help friends clean, and it looked like a war zone. I've never seen anything in my life ever that came close to what the locals in Lismore went through. There's been a huge community effort since to clean up and, get rid of the rubbish, but we are probably still a year or maybe years away from any kind of normal life in the area. What's the situation at the moment? Have you got power back in the shop area?
Okay, so parts of the Lismore CBD do have power in. I'm waiting to have Essential Energy restore power to my shop, and this should happen within the next week now. So as soon as that happens, we'll start work on preparing to get the shop back up and running again.
Wow. So it's been about 10 weeks, is that all right? So this area has been without power for about 10 weeks. It's quite hard to imagine.
And it depends on the amount of damage, in different shops. I know Essential Energy, when they looked at our board, I needed to do some work to replace a ground for the electrical board before they could Essential Energy could put the power on. So that's been done this morning.
Good.
That's all ready to go. The electrician's been in and done that, and so Essential Energy, here we come with power.
Okay.
But it's going to be a slow process. It really is.
Yeah.
And again, I'm definitely reliant on the government support for small business,
of course,
to help re-establish the store.
Yeah. What's your experience been so far with government support? Are they keeping their promises so far?
Well, I think it's been a slow process for a lot of people that I've spoken to. It's only been 2 weeks since I've put my application in.
Yeah. Okay.
Showing invoices and also quotes for the first 25,000, and then once that's been provided proof of, once they pay the 25, then I have to provide receipts for another $25,000, which they'll reimburse. So that's their process. But I can see it being a slow process because I actually, when I went to the service, New South Wales, I was talking to one of the staff there, and they were saying a lot of, even was there 2 weeks ago, like at least 2 out of 3 people that were going in there for the first time. So it's going to be a slow process, I think, to get the monies through, unfortunately.
Okay. You're well connected in the local music scene, and obviously, businesses will hopefully get the support they need. But in my experience, musicians are often not necessarily on the radar when the government hands out support. Have you heard from the local music scene? Are musicians, people whose life depends on music, are they getting support?
If they've for those who lived in and had their homes damaged, they're getting hopefully they're getting that support for emergency funding and that sort of thing. But I'm not aware of any other sort of major grants or things being provided to musicians. And some who have lost their musical equipment.
Yes.
In the flood. Here in Lismore, and there's obviously other areas around the region that have flooded where musicians have lost their equipment. There's been a little bit of on Facebook. I've noticed there's been some people offered to restore instruments, and I a really nice story that came through. A musician I know, he had his little Fender amp go through the flood, and he put it out on the side strip to be taken away, and anyway, he saw the post that was put up, and so he went and retrieved it, and it was taken away, and he just received it back restored and looked like brand new. So
that's great.
There's some lovely stories that I'm hearing and seeing.
That's my experience as well. That despite all the trauma and the shock that our community is in, there's been these bursts of beautiful moments of solidarity and care, where the community sort of helps each other out. That's really good to see. What does the music scene in Lismore need to get back on their feet right now? What needs to happen in the next couple of weeks, months, and possibly years?
Well, I think it's the venues. We've definitely lost two venues here. My understanding is the Richmond Hotel and the Northern. I believe that they're not going to be operating. My understanding is so. It's finding. I suppose it's finding venues that are wanting to put artists into their pubs or in the clubs in Lismore, than particularly
in Lismore. Yeah. So it would be a nice idea if venues from the surrounding areas would sort of prioritize musicians from Lismore for a while to help balance out the loss of income. That'd be
really, really nice if something like that happened.
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea. There's a concert happening in Lismore. Are you aware about that?
So there's one on Sunday.
Yes.
With some major artists appearing, which I thought was from the Chug Group, and people like Darryl Braithwaite, John Stevens.
Yep.
Just to name two of the artists they're going to be appearing. And
correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's Grinspoon on the bill as well.
They're going to be headlining. Now, Grinspoon, they formed here at Southern Cross University when they were all students studying their music degrees, and their first gig, I believe, was at the Golan Hotel, which is on the corner of Woodlark and Keene Street in Lismore. And from then they've gone on to they won a Triple J New Artist in a competition, and that really set them on their road as a band and recognised nationally,
and internationally. So they're probably one of the most prestigious bands from the Lismore area, definitely. And they make fantastic music. So I really like their music as well. So I'm looking forward to taking my kids on Sunday. Hopefully the weather will hold.
So I hope it shows. So it'll be out of the Lismore Showground. Yes.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Good. And besides local venues, what do musicians need directly in order to get their music businesses back on track?
Well, there's been some fantastic. There's been a project where people have been giving musicians instruments that in replacement of the instruments they've lost, and that's wonderful. So
that's fantastic.
That sort of thing allows a musician to get out and play again, where they don't have the money that they can afford to go and purchase instruments, considering if they've lost everything else that they possess.
That's a great initiative. Yeah,
it really has been, and I sort of take my hat off to the person that actually went and started organising that, and they've been going right around the area, wherever people have lost their musical instruments, and that's been a wonderful thing.
Yeah, right. So I'm not a resident of Lismore, so you probably know the area better, but it's my understanding that the area that went under is also known for lots of businesses, the CBD, as well as the creative community.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess there are a lot of people in the creative industry affected who may have lost their rehearsal rooms or studios or
That's right.
offices. Yeah.
And I even think of people like Jilly Jackson with the lanterns that she produces. Like, she would have had storage sheds, and I don't know how she's fared in that, whether she got any of that out. But the various creatives and even the gallery here in Lismore, that the water went through there and damaged things like artwork and things like the Hannah cabinet, which is an incredible piece of woodworking that was created by Jeff Hanna, and it was on exhibition at the gallery here in Lismore.
Yeah,
Norpa, another wonderful institution. They would have had damage done to their building there, where they have their offices at the Lismore City Hall.
The conservatorium was badly affected.
Absolutely.
I saw a photograph on social media that just broke my heart, of literally a big pile of broken guitars, a pile that they had to chuck out. They were just completely destroyed. That was heartbreaking. Okay, well, I believe that the conservatorium has found temporary shelter with Southern Cross, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely. And Southern Cross University have been absolutely wonderful, opening their arms to the community and allowing the community to use their facilities. I think that's, I think Southern Cross needed to be recognised for that particular effort there.
Yeah, that's right. Wow. Okay, good. I think it's probably time that we wrap it up. I'm fully aware that you're a very busy man. I think we probably just finish it up here. But just before we do, if I ask you to look into your crystal ball for, let's say, the next 10 years, what's the music scene going to be like in Lismore and the surrounding areas? What trajectory can you foresee at this stage?
That is a really hard question. Like, there's so many musicians living in Lismore and surround of such a national and international stature. It's really hard to tell, actually. I'd like to say I have a very clear idea what's going to happen, but I really don't at this point in time.
I understand. Okay, so it's the uncertainty right now that really dominates.
Yes, I think so.
Nobody really knows, and we just all have to stick together and make it happen.
I think so.
Okay, good. These are good words to finish up. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Cheers. Thank you, Gary, for this interview. This was officially the first interview of this podcast series with snoring baby sounds in the background. How cute is that? Please visit the show notes to find links to Gary's music and the organizations mentioned in this interview. Gary, I wish you and your family all the best for the weeks and months to come, and hope that things will eventually return to some type of post-flood normal in Lismore. The music scene there needs all our help. So let's all chuck in and go to gigs, buy records, buy merch, and so on. Let's help these people out. Okay, this is all for now. Please subscribe, please rate this podcast, and recommend this podcast to all your friends. I'll speak to you next week. Bye for now.